What impact is Donald Trump's presidency likely to have on the India-America relationship and on the global geopolitical order? To talk about this, we're joined live from Canberra by the president of the Observer Research Foundation, Samir Saran, one of India's sharpest thinkers in foreign affairs. Samir, thank you for taking our time on a big day. Donald Trump once again beating pollsters, all predictions being proven wrong. He's going to come back as the 47th president of the United States. On balance, do you think Donald Trump is likely to be better from India's perspective, from Prime Minister Modi's perspective, than Kamala Harris would have been?
Well, my view on that has always been that India does well with each American presidency. And I think that is not going to change. Our relationship is going to be strengthened. Every president has contributed to the furtherance of this bilateral. And I have no hesitation in suggesting that we are going to see the best 4 years. And by the way, to be fair, Biden did contribute to the bilateral, even as some of his colleagues in Congress continue to induce some irritants into the relationship. But Donald Trump will be good. We know his views on a number of key important geopolitical questions, especially concerning the Indo-Pacific, China, and of course, the importance of the India-US bilateral. I think what is to be watched is how Europe reacts to this, how Europe responds to the Trump presidency, and how the transatlantic partnership plays out. That is important because there is a war which is ongoing in Europe. And Trump may have his own design for how to bring that to a closure or to proceed with it. So I think it is the transatlantic relationship that is the interesting dynamic to watch out for. India-US relationship will be strengthened. We are, of course, going to face headwinds of tariffs. But if we play our cards smartly and we align well, we could actually benefit from it. Because believe you me, if we add a certain tariff to all, there is a level playing field, and those who he believes have been perversely benefiting, he's going to probably add an additional layer of the Trump tax on them. So I think there is an opportunity here for India not to get too hassled by the conversations around trade and tariffs, and to ride out this particular new transition for its own purposes.
Samir, candidate Trump called India tariff king, spoke about wanting to raise tariffs against India. He's also planning to do that with China. But let's just for a moment deal with the potential negatives of having Donald Trump as the next American president. He's mercurial, less predictable, more transactional. So what are the pitfalls that you think India and Prime Minister Modi need to look out for?
Exactly those, that he is unpredictable, he is transactional, and he is going to seek a fair deal. And we will have to be on our toes negotiating at the best of our capabilities, safeguarding what is important for India and offering him something that he believes is important for the US. I think, let's be honest here, there are no free lunches. If anyone believed that the previous administrations in the US were offering India some largies, it's rubbish. We always had to fight and claw for every space that we were able to claim under any US presidency. With Donald Trump, it will be more vocal, it will be more visible, it might be more louder. But the texture of American desire to benefit from economic growth that India is bringing to the table is going to allow us to negotiate a fair deal. And I think I'm confident that at the end of the day, he wants a deal.
When Donald Trump was elected president the first time, he took the tariff battle to China, spoke about wanting to make America great again, bring manufacturing back to the United States. He now wants to push forward that agenda. How do you see trade relations and the strategic relationship between China and the United States play out over the next 4 years?
Again, I think there's going to be a bit of a shadow boxing there. The Chinese are not without agency. The Chinese have enough capabilities to respond. It will be an interesting few months, initial period, when I think they will arrive at some balance. But the determination of the administration to make sure that China has no free riding anymore on American technology, American investments, American infrastructure shall be, I think, the dominant mood. And here, I think we'll have to be vigilant and alert to the opportunities that they may offer. Now, this is not going to be linear. This is going to be in the backdrop of Europe if it decides to distance itself from Donald Trump, may actually begin to get cozier with China in terms of certain economic activities. So very interesting dynamic. What happens to the transatlantic relationship? Will some of the European countries be forced to reconsider their relationship with China if there is a belligerence from White House that is directed their way? So it is going to be a slightly complex landscape, Rahul. There's no linearity here. It's a brand new start. And best of luck to our Foreign Office and our Prime Minister's office. I think they will have to, in many ways, reset and restart the
About
relationships.
ending the war with Ukraine in one day. He has a better equation with Vladimir Putin than the recent American presidents. How do you see the Russia-Ukraine war play out? And if the US and Russia see a thaw in their relationship, to what extent is it advantageous for India?
No, for us, if we can find Kissinger in Washington D.C. to do to the Russia relationship what Kissinger did with the China relationship in the 21st century, if we can find that equivalent who can actually create that thaw and who can actually prevent this from sliding further south, the relationship between Russia and US, it will be very good for us. I think it offers India room to breathe. Right now, our worst nightmare would be a corner which has both Russia and China hand in hand. And I think allowing Russia room to maneuver is beneficial for the West, which they don't understand at this particular moment, and rightly so because of what's happening in Europe. But it is also something which is very useful for India. So yes, I don't believe that is going to happen, by the way, Rahul. I think that's a very difficult, very remote possibility, Russia-America thaw. But I would hope that Donald Trump would revisit what's happening in Ukraine and impress upon his European partners to seek an early peace deal with the Russians. And of course, the Russians should be fair in their offer as well.
Now, we know that Kamala Harris seemed more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, even though during the campaign she seemed to dodge questions when she was asked specifically about what was happening in the Middle East. But how do you see the Middle East war between Iran and Israel, even if it's not an open, direct military confrontation, ongoing military confrontation, but how do you see this dynamic play out under a Trump presidency summit?
No, I think this is perhaps the second most important question. The transatlantic partnership was the first, and I think the second is what happens between Israel and Iran. And Rahul, I don't know. All bets are off. I think I fear that Israel may be emboldened to be more adventurous vis-a-vis Iran. And by the way, there is a special chemistry between Netanyahu and Donald Trump. And by the way, this is no longer about Palestine anymore. It's about Iran and Israel. With Donald Trump's presidency, Iran becomes part of the bad guys. And in some sense, that is going to be that is going to capture the imagination of the Mandarins in Capitol Hill, and not necessarily what's happening in Gaza and with the Palestinians. And that is, I think, the other question that we need to watch out for. What happens to the Israel-Iran tension? Would Donald Trump be swayed by his partners in the Middle East and try and do a bigger deal which includes Iran on it? Or would he side with his friend Netanyahu and take a certain position against Iran? So I think he has to balance the Abraham Accords, which eventually sought a peaceful Middle East region, which included Iran, or does he want to help Netanyahu settle the current tactical battle that is underway?
And as you're saying, we never really know. What differences are you seeing between this campaign of Donald Trump and what we saw during his speech, that brief speech which he made earlier this afternoon, late night in the United States? To me, he seems slightly more organized, slightly more presidential. He's inviting others to come and speak. He said he invited his vice president to come and speak. He invited the campaign managers to come and speak, some of which we didn't see the last time, also because he probably wasn't expecting to win, as so many books have later revealed.
No, you're right, Rahul. I think it would be safe to assume that he's perhaps visibly more generous in this campaign, both with his vice president and with his team, and has been throughout, to be fair. He has been more mellow and more generous over the past few weeks in his campaign. He has also been less abrasive with his opponents in many ways. I'm not saying that he has not been, but I'm now looking at a relative scale. He's been slightly less abrasive in this particular campaign. But I think you hit the nail on the head. He is prepared. So, over the last 4 years, they have built, in some sense, the white paper on what they do when they hit day one. On day one this time, they would have the team in place, they would have their key policy priorities in place, they would know what they need to be doing. He is more prepared, and for the last 3 to 4 years, it is visible that number of projects in DC, in Washington DC, were being incubated and invested into for this particular possibility. So in a sense, they've been planning for it, Rahul. I think Trump 2.0 is going to be very different. If people believe it's an extension of Trump 1.0, they are going to be caught by surprise. Trump 2.0 may be offering a whole new package.
He's also spoken of not caring as much about NATO, about American alliances as past presidents have. Now, one is to say that that's just candidate Trump saying it. He needn't necessarily walk the talk. The other is, we don't really know. I mean, this is a here and now kind of situation. It's not rhetoric with what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, and Russia wanting to potentially flex its muscles further into Europe. How do you see that play out? How much of what he said in the campaign would he now actually want to walk on?
I think here we can take a cue from what happened last time. Look, there is a rhetoric, there is a campaign rhetoric, and then there is reality. And once you sit in the Oval Office, the world is very different. And in that sense, at that particular moment, you have to grapple with realities. And NATO is a reality that US will find very difficult to walk away from. And in many ways, at least one thing that the Ukraine conflict has done has opened the defense budget purse strings of his partners in Europe. So in some sense, something that Donald Trump had been demanding in his first term, that Europeans should invest more in defense. And in fact, lots of Europeans are buying a lot of American weaponry and American weapon systems, would be an incentive for Trump to perhaps look at NATO differently. I'm not necessarily saying that he is not still going to negotiate a far tougher deal with his partners across the Atlantic Ocean, but I think he would see a merit, and his defense industry sees a merit in a NATO that has greater appetite to invest in defense budgets. So I think in that sense, what he sought out to do, he may have partially achieved before arrival, courtesy the conflict in Europe.
Samir Saran, for joining us on an important day and giving us your insights about what's likely to happen over the next 4 years of the second Trump presidency. Thank you very much. Good night, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rahul.